Story 1. He already knew where I lived. At 2:17 a.m., my phone vibrated against the nightstand hard enough to make the lamp chain rattle. I had been half asleep, the room dark except for the street light leaking through the blinds. The message preview lit up the ceiling in a pale rectangle. "Is your hallway light still flickering like that?" I remember staring at the words for a few seconds, trying to place them. The hallway light outside my unit had been flickering for 3 days. It wasn't visible from the street. It wasn't something you'd see in photos. And I had never mentioned it to anyone. We had matched 4 nights earlier. His name was Daniel. Mid-30s. Normal job. Normal photos. Nothing flashy. We'd been talking the way you talk when you're not sure if you're actually going to meet. Long, casual exchanges about work, bad coffee, sleep schedules. It felt easy. That night, we were just trading small talk. I had told him I couldn't sleep because the elevator in my building kept making this low, grinding noise. It had been out of service for weeks, but maintenance kept turning it on and off at random hours. That was the only building detail I'd mentioned. I picked up my phone and typed back, "What hallway light?" There was a pause. The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, came back. "The one by your unit. It's been blinking every few seconds. It would drive me insane." My bedroom felt colder than it had a minute earlier. I sat up, listening. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of my refrigerator and the occasional thud of pipes in the walls. The hallway light outside my door did flicker every few seconds. You could see it under the crack at the bottom of the door, a faint pulse of dim yellow. I told myself it was a guess. Old buildings have flickering lights. It wasn't that specific. "How would you know that?" I asked. He responded almost immediately. "Lucky guess. Old buildings always have something wrong." That made sense. It was logical. I put the phone down and lay back, but I didn't fall asleep for a long time. I kept watching the thin line of light at the bottom of the door, waiting for the flicker. It blinked exactly as he'd described. The next day, I brushed it off. We kept talking. He didn't bring it up again. 2 days later, around 11:40 p.m., I was heating leftovers in my kitchen when my phone buzzed. "Did they ever fix the elevator?" he asked. I leaned against the counter. "No. Why?" I figured. I can't imagine living that close to the stairwell with it broken. That door slams all night. I stopped reading. My unit was directly next to the stairwell. The heavy metal door did slam, especially after midnight when people came in from the parking lot. It echoed through my bedroom wall. I had complained about it once to the leasing office, but never to him. I was sure of that. I scrolled back through our messages. We had talked about work shifts, food, movies, sleep. Nothing about my unit's location. Nothing about the stairwell. "You're making weirdly accurate guesses," I wrote. He sent a shrug emoji. "I've lived in places like that. You can always tell which units are by the stairs." "How?" "Noise patterns." That answer didn't actually explain anything. I walked to my front door and stood there for a moment. I could hear faint footsteps above me. The building smelled faintly like detergent and old carpet. Everything felt normal, predictable. I opened the door and looked down the hallway. The fluorescent light near the ceiling blinked softly, just like it had for days. The stairwell door sat 10 feet to my left, closed. No one was there. That night, I muted the conversation. The next afternoon, he messaged again. Random question. "Do you always leave your trash can right outside your door?" I felt a slow pressure build behind my eyes. I didn't respond right away. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. My trash can, a small gray one, sat outside my door on Tuesdays for pickup. It was Tuesday. I hadn't told him that. I stepped quietly to my door again. I didn't open it this time. I just listened. Silence. No footsteps, no voices. I typed back carefully. "Why would you think that?" "Just a guess," he said. "I used to do the same thing." I checked his profile again. The photos were generic. Coffee shops, a hiking trail, a dog that could have been anyone's. His bio didn't mention my city. In fact, it listed a different one about 40 minutes away. I asked him where exactly he lived. He gave me a neighborhood name, real place, opposite direction. That should have reassured me. Instead, it felt rehearsed. Over the next 2 days, I paid attention to everything, every sound in the hallway, every car door outside, every shadow that passed under my door at night. Nothing unusual happened. No one knocked. No one lingered. Then, just after midnight on Friday, my phone buzzed again. "Your upstairs neighbor just dropped something loud." A heavy thud echoed from above my ceiling, almost at the same moment. I froze. The timing was too precise. Not predictive. Not vague. It had happened, and then he had texted. I didn't answer. Another message came through. "See? I told you. That building's noisy." My hands felt unsteady, but I forced myself to respond normally. "You're starting to creep me out." A pause. Then, "I don't mean to." I stared at those 3 words. They weren't defensive. They weren't apologetic. Just flat. I went to my window and pulled the blinds aside slightly. The parking lot below was half lit. A few cars. A security camera mounted above the entrance. No one standing around. No headlights turning on. I checked the dating app location settings. It only showed approximate distance. Nothing precise. I tried to think logically. Could he know someone in the building? Could he have lived here before? Maybe he recognized the layout from experience. I asked him directly, "Have you ever been inside my building?" The typing bubble appeared immediately this time. "No." "Do you know someone who lives here?" "No." "How do you know all this?" There was a longer pause than usual, almost a full minute. Then he wrote, "You never asked how I knew where to swipe." That sentence didn't make sense to me at first. What does that mean? Another pause. "You're not hard to find." I felt my pulse in my throat. "I never gave you my address," I typed. "I know." That was it. No explanation after, just, "I know." I didn't respond again that night. I turned off my phone entirely, something I never do. The apartment felt smaller than usual. Every sound carried farther. In the morning, I checked the app. His profile was still there. Our chat was still open. Nothing deleted, nothing dramatic. I scrolled back to the beginning of our conversation, reading slowly. He had never once asked where I lived, not even casually, not even in the way people usually do when planning to meet. He hadn't asked what neighborhood I was in. He hadn't asked for cross streets. He hadn't suggested meeting somewhere near me. He never needed to. I walked to my front door and opened it. The hallway light had finally stopped flickering. It was steady now. For a second, I felt relieved. Then I noticed something small I hadn't before. On the carpet, just a few feet from my door, were faint scuff marks. Not new exactly, but concentrated, like someone had been standing there repeatedly, shifting their weight in the same spot, facing my door. And I understood very clearly why he never once asked for my address. Story 2. The location she sent wasn't a real address. At 8:43 p.m., I turned into an empty parking lot where a restaurant was supposed to be. My headlights swept across cracked asphalt, a row of loading docks, and a dark warehouse with boarded windows. There was no sign, no cars, no building that looked even partially open. My phone vibrated in my hand. "I'm here," she wrote. "I see you." I read the message twice before looking up again. The pin she had sent earlier that afternoon dropped exactly where I was parked. Same coordinates, same name attached to it, a small Italian place I'd never heard of, but didn't question. It had reviews, photos. Nothing strange. The lot was silent. No music, no other headlights, just the faint hum of my engine and the ticking sound as I shifted into park. "I think this is the wrong spot," I typed. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. "No, you're in the right place." A second message followed. "You just pulled into the 3rd row near the light pole." I looked up at the light pole. It flickered slightly at the top, casting a weak orange circle onto the pavement. I hadn't seen anyone. The warehouse to my right was dark. The street behind me was empty. I stepped out of the car slowly. The air felt colder than it had when I left my apartment. Not freezing, just sharp. The kind of cold that makes small sounds travel farther. "I don't see you," I sent. "You're wearing a dark jacket. Gray shoes." I glanced down at myself. It wasn't hard to guess clothing colors, but the detail about the shoes made my chest tighten. They were worn gray sneakers, slightly scuffed at the toes, not noticeable from far away. I turned in a slow circle, scanning the lot. "Where are you?" I asked. A pause. "Closer than you think." I didn't like that answer. The warehouse had 2 levels of narrow windows along the side facing me, all dark. The only other place someone could be was behind the line of dumpsters near the loading dock, or inside a parked vehicle I couldn't see. My phone buzzed again. "You're looking toward the building now?" I stopped moving. The timing was exact, not delayed, not vague. My pulse sped up, but I kept my breathing steady. I didn't want to overreact. There were logical possibilities. Maybe she was across the street. Maybe she was in an apartment overlooking the lot. Maybe she was joking, trying to be playful. "I think this might be a prank," I typed. "I'm not joking." Another message followed. "You just checked over your left shoulder." I got back in the car. I didn't slam the door. I didn't rush. I just got in and locked it quietly. The interior felt safer, even though I knew it didn't really change anything. "Okay," I wrote. "If you're here, wave." There was no response for nearly 30 seconds. Then, "You're in the blue sedan. You just locked it." I hadn't told her what car I drove. My profile didn't mention it. We hadn't talked about vehicles at all. I started the engine. She texted again before I could shift into drive. "Why are you leaving?" That was the moment something shifted inside me. Not panic, not even fear exactly. Just a quiet decision. "I don't see a restaurant," I replied. "I don't see you." "I'm here." "Then come to my car." Another pause. "No." The warehouse sat unmoving in my rearview mirror. The lot remained empty. "You're overreacting," she wrote. "It's just a misunderstanding." I put the car in reverse. "Wait," she sent immediately. "Don't." The urgency in that single word felt different from her earlier messages, less controlled. I backed out of the space and drove toward the exit slowly, headlights sweeping across the warehouse wall one last time. "Why won't you just look up?" she wrote. I didn't respond. I turned onto the main road and kept driving until the warehouse disappeared behind a row of closed storefronts. My phone buzzed 3 more times, but I didn't check it until I was 5 minutes away, stopped at a red light. "You didn't have to leave." "I was right there." "You didn't even try to find me." I typed one question. "Where were you standing?" The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Near the entrance." There was no entrance. She didn't reply to that. I drove home in silence, the radio off. The whole thing felt unreal in a quiet way, not dramatic, just wrong. Like a conversation slightly out of sync. When I got home, I parked on the street instead of in my usual garage spot. I'm not sure why. Habit felt unreliable. Inside my apartment, I replayed the evening carefully. She had suggested the place. She had sent the location. She had said she could see me. She had described my movements accurately. I opened our chat and scrolled up to earlier messages. We had talked for 3 days. Normal things, work schedules, favorite food. She had seemed specific enough about her own life, a marketing job, a roommate, a dog named Clover. Nothing dramatic. I searched the restaurant name online again. This time, nothing came up. No reviews, no photos, no listing. The pin she had sent still existed in our message thread, but when I tapped it, it opened to a blank location label. Just coordinates. I went cold for a moment. I checked the app. Her profile was still active. Same pictures, same bio. I opened her photos carefully, looking for reflections, background clues, anything that suggested proximity to that warehouse. Nothing obvious. Then I noticed something small I hadn't paid attention to before. In one of her photos, taken at night, there was a faint orange glow in the background. A tall light pole, industrial looking, the kind you see in large lots. It could have been anywhere. I told myself that. My phone buzzed again. "I didn't mean to scare you," she wrote. "I'm not scared," I replied. "That's good." A pause. "You drive carefully." I stared at that message longer than the others. "How would you know what I drive?" I asked. No typing bubble appeared this time. Minutes passed. I checked her profile again. Still there. I went into my camera roll and zoomed in on the photo from earlier that evening. A quick picture I had taken of the warehouse sign when I first arrived, intending to send it to her as proof the restaurant wasn't there. In the corner of the image, barely visible near the second-floor window, there was a shape behind the glass. Not a clear figure, just a darker outline against the dark interior. Vertical, still. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred. It could have been anything. A reflection, a pipe, a trick of shadow, but the angle matched exactly where my headlights had swept when I first pulled in. And she had said, "You just pulled into the third row, near the light pole," less than 10 seconds after I parked. I set my phone down and looked toward my own window. For the first time since I got home, I realized something simple and precise. She never once asked what car I drove. Not before we agreed to meet. Not while I was there. Not after I left. And she had still known which one was mine. Story 3. Her profile didn't exist the next morning. At 7:12 a.m., I reached for my phone to reread the message she'd sent the night before. The app refreshed once. Our conversation vanished. Her name was gone. Her photos were gone. It was as if the last 5 days hadn't happened. At 11:38 p.m., she had texted, "I had a really good time tonight." I remember the time because I checked the microwave clock when the notification came in. I smiled. The date had felt normal. Not great, not bad, just slightly off. We met at a wine bar downtown at 8 p.m. She arrived on time. Navy sweater, hair pulled back. She looked like her photos, just quieter in person. Her voice was softer than I expected. We talked for 2 hours. She said she worked in consulting. "What kind?" I asked. A small pause. "Operations stuff." Later, she mentioned relocating recently for a new role. When I asked where she moved from, she said Chicago. I'm almost certain earlier she'd said Denver. Not confidently, just enough to register. When the bill came, she insisted on splitting it exactly. Outside, she hugged me lightly and said she'd like to see me again. At 11:38 p.m., she confirmed that. At 7:12 a.m., she no longer existed on the app. I assumed she unmatched me. It happens. But when I searched her name manually, nothing. No profile, no trace. Even our message thread had disappeared. She'd given me her number in case the app glitches. When I called that afternoon, it didn't ring. Just an automated tone, then disconnection. I checked Instagram. Nothing. Variations of her name. Nothing. It felt excessive to keep looking, so I stopped. 2 weeks passed. Then, one Tuesday at 10:30 p.m., I was swiping absent-mindedly when I saw her face again. Same smile, same slight tilt of the head, but the name was different. Not Lauren. Maya. The bio was identical. Recently relocated. Love quiet wine bars and early morning walks. The city listed wasn't mine. It was 2 states away. I opened the profile carefully. 2 photos were the same, the navy sweater and the lake picture. A third was new. The prompts were identical. Same wording, same punctuation. In her original profile, she'd answered 2 truths and a lie. One truth was that she broke her wrist falling off a rental scooter. She'd shown me the faint scar on her left wrist during the date. This profile had the same story. I closed the app, then reopened it. The profile was still there. This time I swiped right. We matched within minutes. No delay. I stared at the chat box before typing, "Hey, you look familiar." The typing bubble appeared almost instantly. "I get that a lot." Her tone felt polished, controlled. "Have you ever lived in my city?" I asked. Longer pause. "No, I've only ever lived here." Here, meaning the city 2 states away. "I could have sworn I saw you at a wine bar downtown a few weeks ago." "I don't really drink wine," she replied. She had ordered a Cabernet. I remember because she asked which one was driest. I kept my tone even. "You've never been to bar name?" "No." No hesitation, just certainty. I shifted. "What kind of consulting do you do?" "Operations stuff." Exact phrasing. "You ever break your wrist?" I asked. "I've never broken a bone." I stopped messaging after that. Not because I was scared, because I didn't know what question made sense anymore. Over the next few days, I checked her profile occasionally. It stayed active. The distance marker shifted slightly, as if she were moving around that other city. Then one morning, it disappeared again. Not unmatched. Gone. 3 weeks later, she appeared again. Different name, new city, same bio. The profile picture was cropped differently, but it was undeniably her. This time, I didn't swipe. I just looked more carefully. In each version of her profile, the age shifted by a year or 2. Subtle. Plausible. The cities changed every time, large enough to blend in, far enough to avoid overlap. She wasn't hiding. She was resetting. Meeting someone under one name. Leaving before questions formed. Reappearing somewhere else with minor adjustments. Not disappearing completely. Just starting over. The last time I saw her profile, one line had changed. Recently relocated. Love quiet wine bars and early morning walks. Looking for something steady. Steady. That word hadn't been there before. I closed the app and didn't reopen it for months. Because what unsettled me wasn't that she lied. It was how cleanly she erased herself. How easily she stepped back into the same outline somewhere else. As if none of it ever happened. As if I had imagined the entire evening. And somewhere in some other city, at exactly 8 p.m., she's probably sitting across from someone new. Same stories, slight adjustments. Watching for the moment their memory starts to conflict with what she's saying. The inconsistencies weren't mistakes. They were rehearsals. If you enjoy slow, unsettling horror stories, consider liking the video and subscribing.